Hi, guys, and welcome back to Pass the Syrup, the estate agency podcast run by agents for agents, where we dissect, review, look at all the waffle out there, try and put some syrup on the waffle because syrup makes things taste nicer. Today, I am joined by three fantastic guests. We have the marvelous Megan 18 of Location Location. Hi, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm bloody wonderful. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit, 30 seconds, who you are, where you come from, what you do?
I'm Megan 18 from Location Location. I am entering my 14th year in a estate agency, worked in all the different roles throughout, and I'm now based in Stoke Newington with our fabulous team there.
Very, very nice. Megan, you're also running for something right now. Let's just get straight into that.
Just get straight in there.
Let's go for it. What is it you're going for right now?
So I'm hoping to be the next vice president for Arla Property Mark. So voting's open now. Click the link that I'm going to clearly paste below. Yeah, we've got another week left, and then we'll see what happens.
Exciting stuff. So, what's the role of a vice president?
So essentially, if you think about like a lead singer of a band, that's basically what the president is. So we'll be out there. We'll meet the members. So you do a 3-year term, and your last term, the last year, is the actual president of all the letting agents as Arla. So it's a big job. Very exciting. We've got NEA being voted for at the same time. So there's some great candidates out there for everybody to look at.
Excellent. Exciting stuff. Good luck. So there will be details below for, I guess you have to be a member to vote for Megan. So we can only provide content for them to click through to, and right? Okay.
You can. Enthusiasm and sharing. That's what you guys can offer.
Enthusiasm and sharing. That is lovely. I like it. Jazz hands. So you've reminded me. So I never ever do this, and I'm told that I must relentlessly do it. Right now, when you're watching, hit subscribe, hit like, give us a comment, say how wonderful Megan's hair is looking today, irrespective of the humidity in the air. And I'm going to say that again and again, because I don't say it, and apparently it helps a lot, which I believe. Let's move on, because I'm waffling. Daniel King of urban.co.uk joins us. Daniel, how's it going?
I'm good. Happy to be here. How are you?
Good, man. Just wonderful this morning with you three. Give us who you are, what you are, where you've been.
Perfect. So like I said, I work at urban.co.uk and I'm also the lettings manager for Housey. It may ruffle a few feathers, but I've always been an online agent as opposed to a traditional high street agent. So I am going to come here with a bit of a different kind of take and perspective on things from the online industry compared to the traditional high street or self-employed type agency.
I like it. We've got a feather rustler. Well, as you can probably tell, speech impediment. I like it, Daniel. Ruffle the feathers. That's easier for me to say. Do your thing. We want as many different opinions as possible. Diversity is absolutely a necessity in our industry. So yeah, bring some of that. Good man. Reece Maddick, Red Roots Property, Cookie Monster. Private joke. No one knows what we're talking about. Reece loves a particular type of cookie. So do I, actually. Which ones are they?
Ben, it's not me that likes the cookies. I think you've just assumed it's me.
So I'm doing a new thing, right? It's a fasting thing. I watched, listened to Diary of a CEO. Anyone listen to Diary of a CEO? Pretty good. And I listened to the episode recently about AI and how it will take over the world, which is terrifying. Won't wander off down that one. But it then prompted me to listen to the one about fasting. And I'm doing yesterday my first 18-hour fast. Sounds like it's not that bad, but this morning, it feels much more difficult. I'm living off a coffee, and I've done 3.5 hours worth of exercise because I'm doing the agent's charity ball, which is dancing, which I'm doing those lessons this morning. Anyway, I'm making excuses for why I'm waffling. Reece, pull me back from the depth, mate. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Forget the cookie comment.
Yeah, so I'm up in Yorkshire. I've been an estate agent for 14 years also. And I've done like a vast role. So I've done online, I've done hybrid, I've done high street before obviously campaigning for Red Roots and doing what we currently do now.
Good man. Okay. Introductions out of the way. Pig zero that. Let's start with Agents Together. Sam Offley. Is everyone a part of Agents Together in this group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Marvelous. So we all know Sam, the man, the myth, the legend. He runs Agents Together, which is a mentor-mentee sort of charity setup. If you are an estate agent with years and years of experience and you want to give something back, contact Sam and become a mentor. It's so, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so rewarding. If you are reasonably new, actually, no, that's not right. If you feel like you might benefit from a mentor, you want to be a mentee, and there's lots of people with years and years of experience who still have mentees, contact Sam. Each week we play a clip from Sam with a current issue that he'd like some support on, and our three guests are going to give their opinion. So let me share the screen and let's hear from Sam. And you guys can tell us what you think.
Hello, Pasta Syrup guests. Now, my question to you this week is, what advice would you give someone who is wanting to improve their time management skills?
So time management skills, that old chestnut, the thing that estate agents are really, really good at, effective diary management and time management and time blocking. And let's go straight into, looks like Megan, you're desperate to give us something. Go on, Megan, what would your advice be?
Is that the face I was giving?
That is the face. I'm ready. I'm pumped. I'm there. Go for me. Give it to me first.
So I think for me, one of the biggest issues that we have is that people don't realize what they're using their time on. So one of the things I like to do with negotiators that are having this issue is I give them like a time block sheet. And throughout the day, they basically shade off, okay, I've spent 3 hours on emails, I've spent 2 hours on the phone. And actually what we then do is we then bulk the times together. So say, for example, they're spending half an hour dripping around emails. Would it not be better to have 2 hours solely focused on emails and nothing else? So try and cut out some of that outside noise. I think as well, you can put in time for specific tasks. So things like proactive calling, for me, that should be diarized and it shouldn't be moved in your diary. It should be a set time every day that you are proactive with your calling out. And I think those probably are my two nuggets.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. We've got to allow some other nuggets to be thrown in the mix. Right now, Reece and Daniel both desperate. Who's going to go first? Because he might say the one I'm going to say. I think if you guys are looking that way, we should rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. That could be quite funny.
Which way are we looking?
Reece, can you look at your right?
I'm on my far left.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so disappointing. Okay, you know what? I'll get the guys to do it post production. So a 1, 2, 3, and then
Ready?
Go.
Exciting.
1, 2, 3. Wow, that was painful, but Reece, you won. That's so bad.
Hands are up.
That's all on me.
I'll
Timing
take it.
issue. Reece, your advice, please, sir.
So my advice is I find myself as a very reactive person. So even in the evening when it should be downtime and personal time, if that email comes in, I'm reacting to it. And what that means is that actually I'm not having any valued time for myself. So I feel like I've got a lack of time, but all that I've lacked in doing is protecting that time. And I think when I've been better at saying like, right, I'm going to come off my phone now and have a couple of hours, just having time for me, when I've gone back to actually working, I've been more productive because I've felt like I've had that time off. So for me, it's, I guess similar to Megan, is putting more structure in place and making sure that I'm not always reacting and that I'm actually being proactive and going into with a bit of a plan.
Good man. Very nice. Daniel, big finish from you.
Big finish, perfect. I'll talk about something that I had at a conference a while back, which was unitasking, which is basically just focus on the one thing at once. It's kind of building slightly off of what Megan's mentioned as well, where if you've blocked out the hour or so in your diary to do your sales call outs, you have a call come in, you take that call, you then get distracted trying to deal with that call, and then you come back to it, and then the hour that you had is now 40 minutes instead. Just trying to make sure that you focus on kind of a single point at once. Everyone says they can multitask. No one can multitask as well as they think they can. So if you focus on specifically the one thing, you'll do that far better than if you were to focus and try and do 5 different things within the same time frame.
Amazing advice. Great advice. Completely agree with everything. Daniel, your final point, actually. So I think the number one skill, the best skill somebody can learn is the ability to focus. I think with focus comes so much more. But it's a really elite level skill. So few people are able to focus. There's so much going on around us. So the notes I've just made while you guys were speaking is time blocking works really, really well. The ability to say no is an absolute, we've become, I think society encourages us to say yes to more than we should and take on more than we should, to say no. Megan, that task you get your guys to, we do it actually at a management level. In the old business, we would give everyone a 30-minute slot breakdown. What are you doing in every 30-minute window of the day? And the amount of, I've spent 30 minutes not really doing anything, is astonishing. And so you could do that for literally just for a week, and it has such an impact. One thing that I've started doing is notifications off.
You know what? I was literally about to say that the game changer of sliding down on your iPhone, and I've just put it on now while I'm on this, so that nothing can ping up and distract me while I'm talking. And the chargers where you have your phone next to your laptop and it's pointing up at you, the phone, and so it's just relentless notifications. Just turning those off, you'll genuinely get some focused time. So great advice, guys. Thank you very much. Let's dig straight into it. So topic number 1, we are going to talk about a business that's been in the trade press an astonishing amount recently. And it's clearly capturing eyes, and in true estate agency fashion, there are lots of comments on these sort of stories in the trade press. Everyone's got their opinion. We're talking about Keller Williams, and there's been conversations recently around them shutting market centres. There's been statements from the top dog saying business is thriving, it's an exciting time. There was an opinion piece last week about the model being very, very difficult to make profitability or build profitability. So look, guys, I don't necessarily want to have a conversation about Keller Williams, because as we've already discussed pre-show, we are not Keller Williams experts. But there's a reason why that model is struggling. I always think of Keller Williams and EXP sort of in the same bracket, because to me, they came up at sort of similar times. They found themselves, they became vocal at similar times, even if one was in the UK beforehand. It appears as though EXP is thriving, and it appears at face value as though Keller is struggling. Anyone have any ideas why? Reece, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think, Reece?
But I think firstly, in terms of like the model, I think there's absolutely a place for it, because there's definitely entrepreneurs out there that are not ready to go out there with their own brand and start their own estate agency, because it's a lonely place, right? And they want that. If they've been in high street branches or even online models, they've had colleagues, and to go out there solely alone is a really, really scary thing. But then there's still that entrepreneur in people that really want to give that a go. So I think.
So Reece, just before you go on, explain the model, because I think there are lots of people that are not, they read the trade press, but they didn't necessarily understand the model. I interviewed someone a few months ago who'd been with a well-known high street agent for 5 or 6 years. I was in a senior position, and when I talked about the other options he had other than us, he wasn't particularly familiar. So I think actually, not everyone in the stage knows everything that's going on. So just explain really, really briefly your understanding of the model so people understand.
Yeah, so like obviously a commission split where you're self-employed, you have your own business, but it sits within a model, and you get support. Now, I know some models will differ, but I think EXP is 70-30, and I think that's similar with Keller Williams. And then I think any agent that you bring on board as well, you can make a commission. So I guess it's, I don't want to say the word, but it is a pyramid scheme of agents that come on board. So
everyone loves a pyramid scheme, right? Until it all topples over. And okay, so the model is self-employed agent. It's a low cost base to start your own business, right? And that's one of the major highlights, that you can get on board. You can start your own business. There are low fixed costs, but you're giving up a chunk of your commission. And as you said, Reece, there's a place for it, because there are definitely models up and down the country that are successfully running that style. Daniel, what's your take?
I'll agree with Reece there that it does, and with yourself, that there are models out there that are doing it really well. From what I've seen kind of in the press, just to touch on the Keller Williams part, the couple that they've closed from Keller Williams, it just seems like that's because, for Bristol and Warwick, that they closed those because they're not meeting the SLA that they've got. They're not meeting the service level agreement. So Keller Williams, again, I'm coming off of kind of press articles here, seems like they closed them themselves to kind of protect the brand in total, which, if you look at it in one hand, great, because it does protect the brand. If someone in Bristol under your kind of that model messes up, causes a big scandal, then you in Newcastle are going to be affected by that because you are kind of under one brand. I think it differs then from EXP because they tend to focus more on the individual person. So you drive past an EXP board and you've got the photo of John Smith, the estate agent, selling it instead of just EXP alone. So the model is out there and it can definitely work, and there's always going to be a place for it. You need to, if you jump straight into starting an agency now, there's so much support that you're going to need kind of from elsewhere, and it's going to be such a barrier to entry that you as an agent would pay the cost to these models to kind of get rid of that barrier of entry so that you can kind of jump in, get things started. Great, you know, kind of 3 people personally that are looking to sell their house at the moment. You can then do it for them, and you can kind of start going straight away, as opposed to going out, applying for getting your anti-money laundering, getting your client money accounts, getting all your legislative pieces in place before you can even start to make any money.
Or you even start to think about paying for your marketing,
Yeah.
which is such a barrier to entry. The cost of putting one property on the market is so significant.
Just agreeing with the portals on the terms that you are going to go for there is going to be drastically taking up quite a bit of your income to begin with, at least.
Absolutely, 100%. So I just want to go back to what you said, though. From a brand perspective, so I think I read this a long time ago, and someone said it to me recently, that a Keller Williams market centre, the threshold for success is to recruit 100 agents to work out of the market centre. So having run an estate agency that was a 5-branch business for a period of 14 years, 100 agents is a big number.
A lot of
right?
agents.
I think when you do that, Ben, as well, you're focusing on the number. It's almost like quality over quantity. And I think
Other way, quantity over quality.
Right. Yeah. But I think if we're comparing the models on why one has worked and why one might not have worked, I think it comes down to experience. People think that this is just going to be an easy industry just to rock up in. And if you've had no experience, I don't personally believe, if you've never done it before, is to just come on board as a self-employed agent, because you haven't had the grounding or, you know, hearing your colleagues deal with situations or been in sales progression situations before. And I think maybe that's probably the problem, is they're focused on too much about trying to get too many people in as more of, you know, I think EXP got some really good quality talent in their early days that were almost, you know, at the top of the tree, but they were great brand representatives because they knew what they were talking about, they knew what they were doing, and they could carry that out.
So, all right, let me push back, right? Because Keller Williams market centres, the people running those market centres are experienced agents. And actually, Keller Williams model versus EXP is individuals working on their own as part of a wider group, I appreciate. But the argument is around a market centre is that you've got experienced people running a market centre, people come in, they get support, they get that learning. So, you would argue that the Keller Williams model looks like it's going to provide more support, more infrastructure, more ability to work with people that have got experience and you know, pick up those soft skills on a day-to-day basis. But what I really want to ask you actually, Reece, is based on what you just said, because I've had this internal conversation about the future of a estate agency, and if everything is going to go self-employed, which I'm not against. In our business, we have employed people, we have self-employed people, we have business partners. I am open to great people working in a format that works for them. That's, you know, that works for me. But with self-employed agents, you said you wouldn't bring in people that don't have experience. And I have the same conversation. I'm proper geek, estate agency. I'll cycle home at night and have an argument with myself. How do we recruit people that are self-employed, that are based away from the rest of the business? And how do we train them up to the level they need? Which I think a lot of it is experience over classroom style training. How do we get people there? Anyone?
I'm going to catch myself out here and answer, because obviously you need that support and you need that training school. But I just don't know if the first place to start is going as a self-employed agency. Now, if we change the industry, like if I wanted to become a hairdresser, I can't just rock up and be like, right, I'm going to join this brand and you're going to train me, but then I can start cutting hair straight away. And I think sometimes we decredit ourselves in terms of what we do. Now, unless someone's got a yacht hidden somewhere, we're selling someone's biggest financial asset. And I think there has to be a sense of responsibility to that, because I'm going out and telling somebody what my house is worth, but I could have just rocked up and set up an estate agency, you know, yesterday. And with a self-employed model that allows people to do that without any experience and any money behind them, then you're facilitating almost.
Listen, I agree. I completely agree. Clearly, my hairdresser started last week. I got one of those new ones. But you're right. This is such a conundrum, and people up and down the Finding Country network will recruit people without experience, and they will spend a long time training them, and it will work out for some people because normally it is down to the individual. But there are so many intricacies around a state agency that you just can't. I'm 20 years in, and I'm still occasionally something will come up, and I'll be, well, that is brand new. I've never heard that in 20 years. So it's difficult. Megan, what do you think?
It's been really interesting sitting here and watching you guys talk about it, because actually you've got me who's never worked like remotely until pretty much now.
Just so you know, there's a social media clip there. You've absolutely shut yourself. I've got a clip of you saying, I have never worked.
I have never
worked. That is going to be a clip.
Never worked. I'm going to lose my job tomorrow. You're going to have to give me. But what we've got here is we've got almost like a complete spectrum of different. So what I'm really interested in is that Daniel said earlier that he's never worked on a high street. So actually, I'm really interested. So like for me, most of my experience and knowledge has come from my colleagues sitting next to me in an office and people coming in and me watching them going, oh, that's an interesting scenario. So I kind of think, actually, I don't want to answer it because I want to know what Daniel's got to say, because actually he's the only one who's done it.
Well, so being an online agent, it's not that we've always worked remotely. We're in an office now. I'm in the office at the moment. There was a couple of years during COVID where obviously people did go remote, and then we were in the office again after that. You learn mainly on the job. So for myself, at least, what I'll do with the entire team here is try and do like a training piece once a week, and that is either go back to basics on this very basic thing, or we do what's called learning from our mistakes, is what we call it. So we fully open about, okay, there's been this mistake that's happened. This has been the outcome of it. What should we have done throughout the process? And it's everyone kind of being open to the mistakes that they've made in the past. You can share that then with your colleague. And with us as well being online, we do tend to have typically larger volumes. Now, it is purely online lettings. I haven't dealt with online sales since 2018 when Urban was working with eMove for like the 6 months before eMove went down. But
nothing to do with you guys, that right?
No. Well, we're still here, aren't we?
We got you there.
Well played. Touche.
Yeah, exactly. We're still here. But coming back to my point, if you're open about your mistakes, and specifically from kind of a letting standpoint, the portfolio and the volume you deal with tends to be a lot higher in an online capacity as opposed to a high street. So if you've got this situation that pops up 1 in 1,000 times, whereas your smaller independent agent might see that once every 2-3 years, we'll see it once every 3-6 months or so. So you do get that experience and that kind of knowledge of how to deal with these very bespoke odds issues that only crop up on occasion. And then you share it with the team and make sure that everyone learns how to do it. You then, if it is a brand new thing, you put a brand new process in place as to what you will now do with this when it next comes out. And you make sure everyone knows exactly what to do at all times. Coming back onto the talking point then, the Keller Williams versus not versus the XP, but those are kind of the two that we've mentioned. I would have thought that Keller Williams being the market center, you can have more of that share of experience, but they're more likely to attract, as Reece has mentioned, kind of new people coming into the industry for the first time. Whereas, as has also been mentioned, the XP, you go out and you're on your own. So I feel like less people with no experience would want to go to an EXP type model where you're on your own, because then you don't have that support. I see Reece is nodding, so I know I'm onto a good point. Whereas with Keller Williams, you've got the support of an office, so you're more likely to hire kind of the initial kind of junior staff who are then the self-employed agents.
But do you not think, though, that we have, like, as agents in general, so obviously we have a duty of care to anyone we employ,
Yeah.
but legally, we're all assumed competent the moment we leave or the moment we start working in a state agency. So whether you've got 25 years experience or 5 minutes experience, in the eyes of the law, you are assumed competent.
Yeah.
So if we're sending out people with no training or no support or limited training and support, and we're just going, yeah, be an estate agent today, do you not think that then, like as a business, and I'm not just talking self-employed, I'm talking everybody,
Yeah.
we have a sense of obligation to those people to ensure it's right, because actually it could be a disaster.
I think you can set out, especially in your own business and own estate agency, then what type of kind of service sits with the level of employee that's there. So you wouldn't initially send out your very first junior person who started yesterday to go and do a valuation for a vendor or a landlord straight away. But you'll bring them along every now and then. You'll get their own opinion, and then you'll slowly kind of build them up for the competency of that service.
But
So
how does that work? Sorry to interrupt, but how does that work in a self-employed model if there is no barrier of it? Like there's nothing.
Yeah,
like,
I think that
here's a package, go for it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're all agreeing on, is that there isn't that kind of knowledge or kind of competency tests for it. It's just
I'll dip into the fine and country world for you. So not in our business, but I know networks, sort of different areas of the country do things in slightly different ways. And so the fine and country business is a licensed business, which is really similar to a franchise, but I call it a license. It's just a little bit looser. And the model for a lot of people is I'll be the licensee, and rather than employ people, I will give territories to self-employed agents. And those self-employed agents will, a lot of the time, they'll base themselves from home. I think a few years ago, they would have maybe had a high street office, or they may have tried an office away from the high street, which is something we're actually looking at for ourselves. But now there's very structured and regular training. There's a very, very detailed induction process. So they understand from a marketing and advertising and business generation perspective what needs to be done to be successful. Beyond that, they have the support of a back office team that are the experts in sales progression or compliance, legislation, anything they may need beyond the front of house stuff. And so that's how I know that the guys up and down the land finding country handle it. Whether it makes for expert estate agents in a short period of time, probably not. Actually, you don't get a 360 degree view of everything in a estate agency, and you know it takes time to build. And actually, in a low volume model like finding country, you only do a handful of deals probably as a self-employed agent every year anyway. So that's a difficult ground to learn, or difficult place to learn your trade. One final question for you though, let's just stick with Keller Williams and EXP, because they feel like they're sort of moving in different directions. Both are massive powerhouse estate agents from the other side of the pond, massively successful in other areas of the world. You touched on this earlier, Daniel, that Keller Williams is about SLAs built around their market center and around the brand, whereas I think you and Reece already made the point that EXP is about the individual.
Yeah.
And it's about the individual agent, and you're building a business with your name on the board as opposed to somebody else's. And we are seeing, I mean, we can't deny it, it's exploding, this model of self-employed agents in the UK. Is that something to do with it? You know, is the agent thinking, well, what do I want my picture on the board? Do I want my name on the board? Do I want to build my business? Or do I want to go sit in the Keller Williams business? Is that got anything to do with it? In terms of talent attraction?
I think that personal branding across self-employed and employed agencies has become the next big thing, you know, and Stephen Bartlett said that investing in your personal brand is the biggest form of self-development you could do for yourself. And I really resonate with that, because I think that is why people go to something like EXP, because I think there's more of a mentoring situation from the people I know at EXP. You know, you've got some great names there. And I think that actually when you're building a business, there's a little part of you that wants your name on the door, is it not? I mean, I don't own my own business, but I think if I did, I'd want to be like, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, I mean, I had my own business, and I'm an introvert, believe it or not, hosting a podcast, and I really didn't want my name on the top, so I came up with a random name. But yeah, I do wonder if that's a thing. You know, if I'm going to go this way or that way, and at some point in the future I'm maybe going to pivot away, do I want to be building a brand around myself? Personal branding, Daniel, Reece, important?
It definitely is. I mean, it gives you also a better kind of exit strategy to it as well. If you've gone through and you've branded all of your sales boards in the town with your name and your photo with just EXP in the corner, and then one day you decide, right, I don't want to do the self-employed model anymore. I want to be fully my own agent and then fully strike out on your own. Everyone knows who you are already. Everyone's seen your name everywhere. So it gives you the exit strategy for then that service, which you could use in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, kind of down the line, but at least kind of helps set that up slightly.
I mean, I'm in agreement. Reece, you look like you're fully in agreement right now. You're frothing to get your.
Yeah, I just can't disagree. I mean, it's people people. It's really, really, really simple. And I think this is a true story, actually. So I like to talk in true stories. But I had an old woman that stopped me in the high street the other day, and I had no idea who she was. I'd never met her before. And she said, "I've seen you on my TV." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Like thinking I've been on Crime Watch or something. But it turns out she'd actually just seen me on Facebook, and she'd seen a video that I'd done. But for me, they joke in the castle, because I'm in the castle all the time in our local area. They joke that I'm a movie star because I've just been hammering videos in every local community page. But everybody knows who I am now. So when people think of property, they think of me, and it's you're building that brand, and that's it's so important. So important.
What a beautiful segue. Go on, Megan. Sorry.
I was just going to say, have you ever heard Neil? Do you guys know Neil Baldock and Matt Baldock? So Neil told me that they've got good personal brands where they are. And he actually had a local person ask him to turn their Christmas lights on at their house. So Neil's got a video of him literally being like,
"Who is that? Which one was it, Matt or Neil?"
Neil, and it's
we are getting a clip of that.
It's such a good video, and literally, so like, can you imagine how awkward it is? It's in someone's living room, and he's there turning their Christmas.
Look, I know who's our office.
I'm going to come for those two massively. Okay, yeah, that is horrendous and highly amusing. Wow, is Megan frozen? Okay, you're back. You frozen? Quite an interesting pose. That's good. Okay, beautiful segue into subject number 2. But before we get on to subject number 2, subscribe, like, engage. If you work for EXP, give us a comment. If you work for Keller Williams, give us a comment. If you're an estate agent, give us a comment. If you're a human being, give us a comment. Anything to engage. Subject number 2, Reece, we're going to let's have you just continue with the flow. The place of social media in a estate agency. So you are a celebrity in your own right. Yeah. Tell us what you've done to be so successful in this respect.
Yeah, look, from a personal perspective, I actually find, and like this podcast is putting myself out of my comfort zone. I wanted to be more committed into video and stuff, and I know we've had conversations about this in the past, Ben, but when I did my first video, I thought it was cringy as anything, but your biggest critique is yourself, and sometimes it's not about the perfect video with the perfect lighting. You've just got to get on, and you've got to do it consistently, and we've found a massive place for that within our business. So we're a high street business that actually has gone into that self-employed model. So firstly, we took on our local market. We very quickly became market leaders or very close to it. And now we've attracted some of the agents that do work for some of the models that you've met will be coming over to us because they've seen what we can offer in terms of like the local brand presence. But it's a big decision for them. And when we're talking to those agents about, joining us, but with their name, because it is exciting having your name above the door, especially if you want to be that self-employed agent, it's a great middle ground. But social media, it's just helped us so much, even though it's been so uncomfortable for me to do. Now I don't overthink it anymore. It's just, okay, we'll whack it out. And I'll
steady on, Reece. I mean, this is a family show.
There's another clip right there.
Absolutely, Reece racking it out. Good for you.
This podcast is ruining careers left, right, and centre.
That is what we're here to do.
But one property within a week, we got 12,000 views. So we were really, really, really proud of that. And then we carried on sponsoring it after that. And we went up to nearly 20,000. And even though it's sold, we still got valuations off the back of it because people are like, oh, I like what you're doing there. And a lot of people in agency, and it really frustrates me. And I use this in my pitch in the living room all the time, is everyone is saying they're doing video trailers now, but you've got some that are saying they're doing videos, and then some that are just got pictures moving left to right, up and down. That is not video trader to me, because it is showing you no different to the photos they've already seen, other than a bit of soft music over it to try and draw them in. So I'm a massive fan now of presenter-led videos, not only because you're selling that house in its best potential, which is what you're there to do, okay? And we have to move on from the times. You know, newspapers wasn't good enough. Rightmove come along. Rightmove is obviously good enough, but you've got to add to that with your passion. But I'll rant over now. Yeah.
Good, lovely. That was a beautiful little rant there. Success, genuine success. Move with the times. Don't fake your videos. Great message. Megan, you're not really into social media, are you?
No, I don't really see the point, to be honest.
No. Come on, tell everyone. Tell us how wonderfully or how well. I don't know. I've lost my sentence. Megan, help me out. Take over. Social media, Megan. How do you do it really well?
I think absolutely everything that you've already just said, really. I think you've got to be confident with it. Like for me, so I went and started up my TikTok account when we didn't have any agents on there, because everyone was like, oh, no one's going to make any business from TikTok. And then I had a landlord bring in 8 sets of keys for a portfolio that I hadn't even been to, because he'd seen my TikTok account. So I'm a firm believer that social media reaches in a completely different way, and that if we just constantly focus on one platform, it doesn't work. And actually, I'm great on TikTok, but I'm absolutely terrible on Instagram. So like everyone's got their platform that they're good at. But yeah, you can get the views, you can get the interactions. But for me, it took me from being absolutely completely not known to suddenly being known across the industry and speaking at conferences. So like it's massively like sent my career like poof.
From a business generation perspective, so that's a great story. You had a landlord come in, 8 sets of keys, because that is the argument you hear time and time again. The consumer isn't shopping on social media, but in your experience, they are, right?
Maybe they might not even been shopping at the time. So this particular landlord, 2 of his properties were available, and the other ones he wanted me to take over management. And that was because he built his trust watching me on social media, because I was being genuine on social media as well. Like you will get 100% real Megan on all those videos. And he saw me answering questions and talking passionately with tenants, with landlords, with sellers, with buyers. And he was like, yeah, okay, I want to work with her. And so actually we did a transference and then 2 new lets on top of that.
That's an amazing story. But the one thing that I think we just need to hammer home, that anyone listening or watching needs to know, is it's genuine, Megan. It's about authenticity. You know, social media can be a depressing place to live if you believe the nonsense that you see, if you believe the waffle, because everyone's leading their best life. And then you meet that, you know, I've got countless examples on my social media that I see people I know presenting in one way in real life. You're actually this character. And I think they do so much better if they were their genuine selves online. And that's why that perspective like that, well, that landlord came to see you. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why people are skeptical about estate agency on social media. So they think they have to fake it. Like, genuinely, you know, couldn't be more wrong. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, the people watching you can tell as well. Like if you aren't being genuine and you aren't being kind of authentic with your videos and with your posts and what you're putting out there, then if people are going to be able to spell that a mile away. And if you are lying about kind of everything that you've put out there, oh, here's a lovely video of our property. We rented it and sold it within 2 minutes of when we first got the instruction through. Probably not, let's be honest. And if you are going out there and you're kind of putting those false statements out, people are going to be able to tell that, and you're not going to get the kind of business in that you want, because that's the point of social media, right? It's there for business generation. You're going to use it to find vendors, generate vendors, find landlords, find tenants, and kind of generate business through it. You don't just kind of do it for the sake of it. There is the business goal that comes as part of it as well. So you need to make sure that you are going to, if you are going through with it, you need to be consistent with things. They'll see, I have no idea how many TikToks a guy's going to scroll through within a day. For you just to be one of those, and you've only ever posted one video a month ago, probably not going to happen. You're putting up 2 different clips every day, all day, Monday to Friday. there's then a much larger spread that you've put out there in the world for people to see.
Yeah, I mean,
you get more back.
What I mean, you're talking my language right now. If it's going to be a lead generation exercise, you need to work it just like you do your other historic lead generation activities. You don't prospect once a year and hope to get results. You don't canvass once a year. These things are daily. They're rituals. They're habitual. And so, yeah, absolutely. But I guess it's a cultural thing where we've seen over the last 10, 15, 20 years, all these activities, they work, they generate opportunities for us. We don't necessarily believe social media can, so we give up after 3 weeks of really crazy intensity and then disappear again. So yeah, it can be a thankless task, as I'm sure all of us know, that you can work at it, and you spend a huge amount of time on a particular piece of content, and it's going to be amazing, and it gets 4 views. And then that dud piece of content that you threw together that you didn't like, but you needed to post something, ends up with 10,000 views. And just that's social media.
So I don't know if you've seen so one of the things that this year, I spoke at the Women in Estate Agency conference about personal branding, and I did the whole be more corgi thing. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but people have taken it massively out of context, thinking I think everyone should be a dog. I have 3 corgis, as you can tell, right? But actually what that was is everything you guys have just encompassed. And it was C, consistent, O, original, R, relevant, G, interesting, and G, genuine, I, and interesting. So be more corgi. And if you're more corgi with all of your social media, then it's going to stick. But you're right, sometimes it flops and sometimes it flies. But I have videos that I thought flopped and then they come back. Like they somehow come back up to the top of the pile. Like I have one video on TikTok that was like probably one of my first 20 videos, and it was about questions to ask in an interview when you want to be a junior neg, and it gets consistent like every week now, but like it flopped at the time.
So we do lots and lots around digital, around videography, around social, and really basic piece of advice: if someone's going to start out now, which, you know, if you think about the amount of estate agents in the country and then how many you see on social media, there's a lot that could just be starting out right now. And they think about things like, or they hear words like viral. I want to go viral. Don't know what it means, but I want to go viral. 20 years ago, it meant something very different, I assure you. You shouldn't, I think there's too much focus on far and wide and not enough focus on niche and relevant. And so, you know, the vast majority of our content is about the local market we work in. And so if I do personally a market update on Chiswick, which is a small town in West London, it's relevant to those people and nobody else. So there's no way for it to go viral because most people are going to flick straight through. I've got no interest in it. And I'm comfortable with that because for the small population, it's a reasonable sized town, but for that population, it's relevant. And so I'm actually trying to, at some point, transact and build a commercial relationship with these people. And that's the benefit of that is. If you want to produce viral content, be very, very comfortable that it's probably not going to be totally related to your area. And that's okay. You can have a mix, but don't obsess over thousands of likes and thousands of views. My view is you actually, if you hit that number really, really early, then your account maybe is not matured enough for it to be really beneficial to you. So I feel like we're all landing on the same place. Go on, Megan.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it was interesting what you just said there. So did you guys see that video that went round of the singing estate agent?
Yes.
It was like the never ending property, which went around my head like constantly. And she's lovely. I watched a couple of interviews with her and she was a really nice lady. But then, I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, she actually was in the trade press again because she's left a estate agency. She was disinstructed because the owner said that they felt the video like almost overcame like what was them wanting to sell their home.
The video was more important than the actual sale of the property.
And like obviously that wasn't the intention of the lady, that was just her style and her unique way of marketing. And you know, you could argue that it got the house out there, but from the owner's point of view, they didn't want their house to go viral, or they didn't in hindsight. They wanted to sell their home. And that lady, you know, she basically said, I've left the estate agency now, like it's not for me, which is a shame because obviously she's got an eye for marketing. But it was an interesting take on that because I think that actually it's all well and good your property is going viral, but sometimes it's not the attention that you want.
Yeah, and there's a really well-known estate agent in London that works at the top end of the market. who left a well-known brand because he used social media and wasn't meant to in the way that he used it. And so there's, I think we've got a long way to come in a estate agency, maybe in the UK, in terms of how we use social media in a estate agency, because culturally, our clients are not necessarily in tune with what social media is. Do we use it actually as a commercial tool? Is it for me, social media is marketing now, much more than a few years ago when it was simply pictures of my children. Now it's actually much more business, a lot less personal. And so we've got a lot to learn in that respect. I think a huge part of the estate agency piece is, can we expose your property to the widest possible audience of the right sort of buyers? And social media allows that. It creates a platform to do that. But if you're not articulating that to your client, there's quite a lot of risk around that. So it's a good point, Megan. Anything more on this before we wrap up and finish on our third subject? No, wonderful. Solid. We are on track for time, guys. You'll be delighted to know.
Amazing. We started this with time management and we're doing such a good job of it.
It's amazing. I'm astonished.
Practice what you preach.
Well, it will be the first time. No. So subject number 3 is very specific. We're going to post this a link to this piece, like we do with all in the content below, everything, the people we talk about, the news articles, different stuff. Very specifically, I want to talk about a news article that came out last week, and it was titled regarding a housing market crash. Now, the reason it stuck out for me is that 160,000 people had read that news piece. Now, that's not common. A trade press news piece is normally a estate agency, and you might get 12,000 people if it's about Purple Bricks or Rightmove. They get the heat, those two subjects. But this housing market crash, it must have been picked up by Google. The algorithm pushed it out and it was a news piece. So that tells you what you need to know. A headline about a housing market crash is important to the world of estate agency, but clearly is something that the consumer is concerned about, they're looking at. Now, it covered off why we may find ourselves in a housing market crash. Let me check my show notes. It's Ed Conway, an expert in economics, predicting that rates might peak now at 5.75, whereas we thought they might peak at around 5%. And we're going to be in trouble. It's going to be worse than the 90s. The impact will be greater on the consumer. Now, there's a bit of clickbait around the headline and there's some content there, but it's another prediction from another expert economist. It seems like they're everywhere. Everywhere I look right now, certainly the last 9 months. I sent the piece to Megan, to Daniel, to Reece. Daniel, let's start with you. What's your take on this?
Like you said, it is a prediction. Whether it comes through or not is going to be a different story. But you also need to bear in mind that when there are those predictions out there saying, no, don't get a mortgage now, it's going to be terrible. It could be terrible for the next 5 years, so don't do anything. It then also has an impact on the consumer behavior at the same time. And you have less people possibly thinking to move and sell up in a year's time, probably going, oh, this piece that I read said mortgage rates are going to be a bit high. So what I'll do is I'll just wait a little bit longer until they come back down again. And then it takes a house for sale and a vendor out of the market then at that same point. You spoke about it. They're forecasting it to be, what was it, 5.75%?
Potentially 5.75 now, yeah.
Yeah, by, was it now or by early next year, sorry?
Early next year.
Early next year, yeah, which is one of the largest kind of rates increase that we've seen in a while. It's been in a good position and very low rates for the last decade or so, a little bit longer, about 15 years or so, really, that it's been in a nice kind of rate for people that's seen that coming through. But again, it's a forecast and a prediction. You can go into search on Google again and you'll see an exact other piece that will say, oh no, there's no housing crash, don't need to worry about it.
It's confusing, right?
Yeah,
if you're a consumer right now, there is so much conflicting news. I mean, we work in this, we live and breathe it. I know you three do. I know when our business does. This is one of those industries where you're always in it. And I know estate agents that are in it every single day and they don't have a clue what's going on. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, in a negative way. What I mean is you can open up the trade press and on any given day find 6 pieces of news that contradict each other. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
Asking prices are increasing. Property prices are down year on year. Mortgage rates are up. but mortgage applications are down. There's so much. Reece, what's your take?
Look, we get asked it all the time as experts, and it's definitely a question I feel uncomfortable with, because like you've all touched on it is a prediction, and you can't assume what's going to happen, and that's something I'm always really careful on. But what you can go on is facts that previously happened when there's been previous things like that. And I think there's always a reason why you shouldn't buy a house. If it's not the interest rates, it might be that, in COVID, property prices went too high, so they're probably going to get downvalued in 2 years' time. There's always a reason why you shouldn't. But there's always a reason why you should. And I think that's really difficult, and that's why you've got the conflicting stories from industry press on what looks good. But if you look back at time to like the last market crash, it's a roller coaster. It will come up, it will go down. So as long as it's, I don't know. It's something I feel really, really uncomfortable to answer, because you can't.
All right, let me take some of the heat off you. Did you know in the last 50 years, property prices have only gone backwards 4 years out of 50? What a crazy stat. So when there is a crash, when there is an issue with the market, property prices generally flatline. You'll see a dip 1 year, and then they'll begin to recover within a 13-month period, which is insane. So to your point, I think if you're in the zone to buy and it's a long-term investment, even a mid-term investment, if you're there for a few years, you're generally going to find yourself in a positive position. Megan, thoughts?
It's funny when people ask me that question. I'm like, look, I might be Meg, but I'm not Mystic Meg. I cannot predict the future. So it is, as we say, it's guesswork. We don't really know what's going to happen. I think what we can be sure of is that while interest rates are at a higher place, we need to be mindful about what that knock-on effect has on our business, not just the consumers. And I think what that means is we really need to be realistic with how we're pricing property. We need to be really realistic and make sure our negotiation skills are really fine-tuned, because people who are at the top level of what they can afford because they've got a new baby coming or whatever the reason for that move is, they are going to be much more engaged about how they're negotiating with you. So you really need to make sure that you have got your negotiation skills in tune. I kind of think that, we keep talking about like, will we get a recession? I think that it's, as estate agents, you should all have to work through a recession. It's part of like the badge of honor that you get. And actually, it's a really good chance to work out where your skill set is. The knock-on effect, I think, though, from my point of view, with a little lettings hat on, is that if landlords are being pushed, they're mainly on variable rates or interest-only rates, all they're doing is pushing the rents up. That's having a massive knock-on effect on then those who are trying to rent, who may be saving to buy or maybe in a vulnerable position. And that's pushing more and more pressure on the government to do stupid changes and talk about things like rent control. If rent control comes in, we then have a massive issue, because then suddenly that's going to be reversing out of the market all these investors. So we have to look at the whole picture on this now. And whilst interest rates are costing people more every month in terms of their mortgage, what is the long-term effect of that? And how is that going to affect both aspects of our business, lettings and sales?
Yeah, we had a detailed conversation about lettings a couple of weeks ago, and the crazy circumstances we find around the country now. Christian from Base Property Specialists had an example where a rent had gone up by 50% for a tenant, which is just, and as it happens, the specifics of the story, it wasn't you've got this scrupulous landlord who's going to treat people badly. He hadn't raised the rent for it was a church. They hadn't raised the rent for an extended period of time. But it is a commercial operation, and they needed to raise the rent, and they gave extended time for the tenants to find a new property, and it just didn't work out. And I'm sure there are stories around the country like that. The flip side of that argument is, if rates are being pushed up, landlords are left with little option but to do the same, pass that on. Do we find ourselves in a position where we need government intervention? I'm not sure. I certainly hope we don't ever find ourselves in a position where we have rent controls, because I think we'll see a mass exodus of landlords, individual landlords from the market. And that can, we were a reasonable sized lettings business actually, rather than a sales business before we sold. And 10 years ago at that point, I remember being in a managers meeting and collectively saying, right now we might be looking at the end of the PRS in about 25 years. because there was so much interference being pushed and so much build to rent being pushed that you're looking at institutional investment, which will scare away. So yeah, I think we're at a real crux, and it will be interesting what happens. In terms of that housing market crash piece, though, and pulling ourselves back because this happens every single episode. What I would say is, Reece, you said don't make assumptions, because they make an arse out of me and you, and you're absolutely right. The assumptions. I'm not saying we shouldn't be able to give guidance or where we think things might move towards, but I don't believe that anyone has ever lived in a period like we've just had over the last few years. The amount that's gone on that we've experienced, which has had an impact on our economy, which impacts the property market, or say whichever way you want to say that. Brexit, which people seem to have forgotten about Brexit. That's just because we've had such a crazy period. But Brexit is a pretty significant issue that we've just dealt with, or maybe still dealing with. Then we had COVID. Then we had a housing market which went absolutely crazy, and now we've got a war, and now we've got cost of living crisis, and now we've got inflation, which everyone's predicting inflation is going to start to do this, and it's doing that again. So those predictions mean nothing, and they are people far brighter than me. The Bank of England 12 months ago told us we'd be in a recession by the end of 2022. It's not their job to tell us that. They told us, and they were wrong, and they are experts. All these experts were telling us we're looking at a 20 to 25% reduction in property price value over the next 2 years. They were saying that October, November last year. Property prices are not doing that. So all these predictions, all these experts that are grabbing the headlines, it's the 5 minutes of fame piece. If I say something really crazy, my business partner said when we were doing a training session recently, the reason that person is on the news is because I'm boring. When I say we're looking at static, we're looking at maybe a little dip, that's boring. No one wants to hear that. I can assure you, no one wants to hear minus 20%, but it's clickbait, isn't it? So I know it's tough out there right now. I know agents up and down the land are thinking, what does the future hold? I would advise, just don't read these pieces. Be informed, be the expert in your area. Megan, absolutely love, get your negotiation skills fine-tuned. I mean, I can't stress it enough. If you're new to the agency business in the last couple of years, maybe you haven't got a lot of experience in what negotiation looks like. It's time for some training, time for some development, time to get on top of that. Because what did you say? Everybody should work through a recession. It's your badge of honor. I said to our team at the end of 2022 that 2023 is the year we've been working for. 2023 is all of our experience means we're going to have a very, very strong 2023 because it's going to be tougher out there. There's going to be agents that are 6 months behind us in terms of what the market's doing. The consumer isn't going to have a clue. Buyers want to buy at 2008. Sellers want to sell at 2021. We're going to have to bridge that gap. It's exciting if you like a challenge, but I'm also very, very conscious that I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's going to be tougher. I mean, I'm weird. I like tough. That sounds fun for me, but that's the game we find ourselves in. Guys, in agreement?
Yeah.
You can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter.
Wow, Megan, you are just social media. Oh, there's so many.
Yeah, but that's going to be you're going to have that on your wall behind you by the end of this.
I think there's two aspects of this as well. We're talking about what the consumers want, and we're talking about what agents need. And I think to protect ourselves, we have to look at our fees, because we're one of the we've talked to. I think Daniel touched on it earlier. We're one of the only industries that hasn't gone with the times and put our fees up, but prices of everything else is going up around us, and it's got to start at home. Otherwise, we're going to be the first to bounce, and then we're not going to give that support and quality to the customer. So the race to the bottom has to stop, and it has to stop now, because it'd be too late if we stop that when the recession comes along, because you won't meet your monthly bills.
Joe Parry said it last week. If your service providers, your third parties, if they're putting their prices up, then you have to put yours up. That was a conversation specifically about Rightmove, but Joe has an exceptional business. He's a 2.5% agent because he believes in the service. He delivers great service and he asks for that fee. And we've had different agents on the podcast that will say, I'm not that level yet. My advice is current market conditions allow you to present a solution that maybe isn't being provided right now, but that solution comes at a higher rate as a more respectable fee point, because you can't deliver great service if you're worried about the next deal. I'm not saying you shouldn't be worried about it. What I'm saying is if it's such high volume to cover the overheads, then service is going to be stretched. So yeah, Reece, that's a great point.
It comes down to as well, it's not my catch line, but I think it was Christopher Watkins that said it, but if they're not agreeing to your fee, you were not good enough. That's what it comes down to. And you will get the odd one that is just a stickler for money, and they are just going to go down the cheaper product because they haven't seen your value. But that's on them, because the majority will see the value you're offering if you go out and pitch it perfectly. And I think coming back to assumptions, because I touched on it earlier, we assume so much more about the customer than they actually know. You know, I've gone in brave before and I've said 2%. Now we know as an industry, 2%, oh, you're smashing it, Reece. But actually the customer turned around to me and said, oh, that's really cheap. And I was like, I should have gone 3%. Our assumption is we're going in there thinking that they're going to think 2% is expensive, but it's not always the case. We need to stop assuming and start with that change now.
If in any other walk of life, if you said, I just need 2%, you'd be like, it's nothing. 2% is nothing.
Yeah,
it's absolutely nothing. But yeah, you're right. Everyone's living in their own head. Everyone's convinced themselves that they can't get this fee, or they're expensive, or somebody else is going to charge less, or they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Right, I'm conscious of time. This has been wonderful. We're going to go we've got 2 segments left. Segment 1 is great agents you guys have worked with, why they're great. Because I'm conscious of time, we're gonna do what we did last week. Great agents you worked with, and then a great piece of advice you would offer. If they mold, because you know this agent used to do something and I think it's a great idea, that's okay. If they don't, they don't. Daniel, over to you. Great agent you worked with, why they're wonderful, and a really good piece of advice that agents should be following right now.
Great agent that I worked with is a guy called Jake Byerley. He's worked here at Housey for years, and he left a couple of months ago. We're bit of context. We're based in Coventry. He moved to London, so he had to kind of change his position and change his own role and take another job in London. He was. I'm saying that like he's passed. He still is a great mentor and a great friend of mine. He has always been very knowledgeable about the industry in total. And again, coming from kind of the online perspective, everyone here, and especially him, we used to look at things in a different kind of view, where you've got this specific problem pop up. Okay, let's look at the damage control for it. Let's look at the process for it. Let's look to try and change this. And it was developing these processes and mentoring the team and making sure that everyone knew exactly kind of what the roles were and knew their own development was what made him a great agent, because he focused on the people side of things.
Very nice.
Coming still to then the piece of advice. The piece of advice is to develop, for any agent out there, develop yourself. Sit down for 15, 20 minutes and write down exactly what you're great at, exactly what you're kind of okay at, and what you're absolutely terrible at. And then you know where to work on. If you don't know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, how are you meant to work on your weaknesses, and how are you meant to build up your strengths even more? Spend the time, just know what you're good at, and then develop yourself the best way that you can.
Very nice. Personal development. Couldn't agree more. Reece, over to you, sir.
Best agent I work with is a guy called Jamie Fisher. So he's got a business down in Essex. So we both worked at Countrywide. He was my first branch manager. I came in as a T-boy on a moped and grew up. But he was just a great mentor. And I see him now at events up and down the country. So obviously he's down in Essex. I'm up in Yorkshire. But it's just good to see him again. And, you know, all of those conversations, like we touched on it earlier, Megan, is being around colleagues in a branch. Like my pitch is 10% of him, 10% of someone else, 10% of that person, and then maybe 30% of me. And there's some great stuff that I learned from him, and he's gone up. My advice is stop assuming, put your fees up, and do it now.
Oh, we should have finished with you. That would have been such a good finish. Stop assuming and get your fees up. Lovely. Megan, over to you for the big finish.
Mine's an easy one. So I am going to give it to Vicky Bibiris, who was my Agents Together mentor originally, and now is my boss.
Wow, did she pinch you?
No comment.
Wow. Wow. It's all right.
There's an NDA that's broken somewhere now.
So she was my mentor, I think, for 2 years, and then it was a match made in heaven by that point. But what she does for her team and for our business is just, I've never worked with anyone quite like her. She's a bit of a force. My advice is going to be that when shit hits the fan, be the expert, because we have the power now to shape the narrative. And as Spider-Man's uncle once said, with great power comes great responsibility. So we have the opportunity now to sculpt the narrative of a housing crash, of the renters reform, whatever it is, but you are the expert, and people and your consumers are looking at you for that advice.
Absolutely, 100% agree. So if we mold that together, if you really, really care about personal development, it will allow you to be the expert in your area. And by being the expert in your area, you 100% charge the appropriate fee. Oh, that's beautiful, guys. It's like you guys planned. Oh, it's wonderful. It's like when you solve a Rubik's Cube. Not that I would know. Okay, so this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Great contributions. We're going to say goodbye now, and Watkins Whimsy is going to sign us out for the day. So, see you next week.
Bye.
Friends of the estate agency industry, we find ourselves at the end of June in unprecedented times in the housing market. I want to talk to you about how we can use these uncertain times to seize the opportunity. The challenges of the cost of living crisis, rising mortgage rates, and inflation have undoubtedly made their impact felt. But let me tell you, as estate agents, we need to see this as an opportunity. Now more than ever, we need to embrace the current market conditions while simultaneously planning for the worst. We need to understand that the housing market can be unpredictable, and if it takes a turn, we must be prepared to adapt swiftly. Our focus must be able to shift from being seller-centric to being buyer-centric at the turn of a hat. We need to recognize the financial challenges that buyers face and sellers face, and the importance of finding homes within their means. We need to be aware of the challenges that our sellers are facing with increased mortgages. Empathy and understanding must be at the core of our approach. As estate agents, we have a duty of care to guide and support our clients through these uncertain times. You need to be there to provide expert advice, navigate the market intricacies, and ensure that you give informed decisions. You need to be their trusted partners, offering reassurance and a steady hand throughout the process. Together, let's rise to this occasion, fellow estate agents. Let's seize this opportunity to make a positive impact on the lives of the people that we serve. We need to both be adaptable and resourceful, and in fact committed to delivering exceptional service to both sellers and buyers. Because no matter what the challenges that lie ahead, all of us need to be confident that we can weather any storm and emerge stronger. It's all about getting people to trust you, and the way that you do that is by being informed and giving them the best advice for them. 2023 could be the best year for UK estate agency. Let's hope so.